Be me. 2-3-year-old female younger sister to my amazing older brother Mark. Mark is 28. Successful software engineer. Makes good money. Owns his house. Always been my role model growing up. Responsible. Kind. Hard-working guy. Never caused problems. Helped pay for my college. Always there for family. Totally the kind of man any woman should be grateful to marry. Around 2019, he starts dating this girl, Sarah, from his work. She's 26. Works in HR. Has master's degree in social justice studies. Seems nice enough at first. Talks a lot about equality and women's rights. I'm pretty liberal myself. So I think it's great that she's passionate. They date for about 6 months before she starts staying over regularly. Notice that she's very particular about everything being equal in their relationship. Insists on splitting every dinner bill exactly down the middle, every single time. Even when Mark offers to pay as a nice gesture, she refuses. I don't need a man to pay for me. That's patriarchal nonsense. Starts lecturing Mark about toxic masculinity when he holds doors open for her. Tells him that opening car doors is infantilizing women and implies incompetence. Mark stops doing nice gestures because she gets genuinely angry about them. Notice that she never does nice gestures for him either. Says that's gender role programming. She moves in with Mark after dating for 10 months. Doesn't pay rent. Argues that since he makes more money, expecting equal rent would be oppressive. Pay equity means accounting for systemic wage gaps that favor men. Mark pays mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything. While she saves her entire salary, she contributes nothing financially, but demands equal say in all household decisions. Insists on redecorating his house to reflect both their tastes equally. Throws out a lot of his furniture and belongings without asking permission. We need to create a space that doesn't center masculine energy. Replaces his comfortable leather couch with expensive organic cotton furniture. Mark seems less happy but keeps trying to make the relationship work. Sarah starts hosting feminist book club meetings at Mark's house every week. Group of women come over to discuss patriarchy and male oppression. I'm there for dinner one night when book club is meeting. Hear them talking about how all men are potential rapists and abusers, discussing strategies for protecting themselves from masculine violence and manipulation. Sarah talks about how she's training Mark to be less problematic. It's exhausting. But someone has to educate these men about their privilege. Mark looks uncomfortable, but doesn't say anything. Just stays in another room. Sarah starts policing Mark's friendships. Says his guy friends are toxic influences. Convinces him to stop going to poker nights and weekend golf outings. Male bonding activities just reinforce problematic behaviors and attitudes. Isolates him from his support network while surrounding him with her friends. Mark becomes quieter. Seems stressed all the time. Starts gaining weight. Works longer hours to avoid being home. Says he's focused on career advancement. Family dinners become tense because Sarah lectures everyone about social justice issues. Criticizes our dad for traditional masculine behaviors like grilling and fixing things. Tells our mom that being a housewife set back women's liberation by decades. Mark apologizes constantly for his family not being progressive enough for Sarah. After 2 years of dating, Sarah starts pressuring Mark about marriage. If you're serious about this relationship, you need to show commitment. Talks constantly about wedding planning and how marriage is patriarchal but necessary. Mark seems reluctant, but proposes because he's invested so much time already. Engagement period is nightmare, of wedding planning dominated entirely by Sarah's vision. She insists on expensive venue, designer dress, elaborate feminist ceremony. Mark pays for everything while she plans everything, according to her preferences. Wedding costs over $40. 000 completely drains Mark's savings account. Ceremony includes vows about dismantling patriarchy and rejecting traditional gender roles. Mark looks miserable during his own wedding. Fake smile throughout reception. Honeymoon is disaster. Sarah documents everything on social media for feminist followers. Posts constantly about how marriage doesn't change her independence or identity. Still a strong woman who doesn't need a man. Just chose to partner with one. First year of marriage. Sarah quits her job to focus on activism. Says traditional employment perpetuates capitalist oppression of women. Starts blog about married feminist life. Writing about training Mark to be better. Makes money from sponsored posts about feminist lifestyle products and services. Mark now supports both of them financially while she builds her influencer brand. Sarah starts therapy to deal with trauma from living under patriarchal structures. Therapist is radical feminist who validates all her complaints about Mark's behavior, comes home from sessions with lists of ways Mark needs to change. He's apparently emotionally unavailable, insufficiently supportive, and subconsciously controlling. Mark starts individual therapy to trying to become the husband Sarah wants. Spends thousands on couples counseling where Sarah's grievances about his inadequacy. Year 2 of marriage. Sarah starts talking about having children. Wants to raise kids without gender roles or patriarchal influence. Plans to homeschool to protect them from masculine educational structures. Mark expresses concerns about finances and readiness for children. Sarah accuses him of trying to control her reproductive choices. Typical male behavior. Trying to police women's bodies and decisions. They fight constantly about timing, the money, parenting philosophy, everything. Mark works 60-hour weeks to afford Sarah's lifestyle and therapy costs. Comes home, exhausted, to arguments about his failure to emotionally support her. Sarah starts posting on social media about husband's emotional unavailability. Shares private details about their marriage problems with thousands of followers. Mark discovers these posts, asks her to keep their problems private. You're trying to silence me. This is classic abusive behavior. Threatens to leave him if he continues trying to control her self-expression. Year 3. Sarah gets pregnant accidentally. Decides to keep the baby. Immediately starts planning elaborate gender reveal alternatives and feminist parenting strategies. Pregnancy becomes about documenting her journey as a feminist mother. Marks even more to save money for baby expenses. Sarah spends money on organic everything. Expensive prenatal classes. Designer maternity clothes. Posts constantly about protecting her unborn child from toxic masculinity. If it's a boy, she plans to raise him without masculine influence. If it's a girl, she'll protect her from internalized misogyny and patriarchal conditioning. Babe is born. Turns out to be a son. Sarah names him something gender-neutral. Refuses to let Mark's parents buy blue clothes or typical boy toys. Mark wants to teach his son about sports and traditional father-son activities. Sarah forbids this. Says it perpetuates harmful gender stereotypes. They fight constantly about parenting decisions. Mark has no say in anything. Sarah documents everything on social media. Painting Mark as unsupportive partner. Year 4. Sarah starts individual therapy again for postpartum depression. Therapist encourages her to prioritize her own needs and independence. Starts talking about how marriage is constraining her personal growth. I'm losing myself in this relationship. Becoming what he wants instead of who I am. Mark is working constantly. Taking care of baby when home. Completely exhausted. Sarah spends days at coffee shops writing blog posts about feminist motherhood. Starts talking about needing space to rediscover her identity outside marriage. Moves into guest bedroom. Says she needs time to think about their future. Mark begs for couples counseling. She refuses. Says he's not ready to change. Year 5. Sarah announces she wants separation to focus on herself. I need to model independence for our son. Show him that women don't need men. Moves out with baby. files for legal separation while figuring out divorce plans. Mark is devastated. Agrees to anything she wants to try. Saving the marriage. Pays for her apartment. Child support. Health insurance. Everything. Sarah starts dating other people during separation. Posts about it online. Exploring my authentic self outside the constraints of heteronormative marriage. Mark isn't allowed to date anyone. She says it would traumatize their son. Separation lasts 8 months. Mark hoping they can reconcile entire time. Spends fortune on therapy. Self-help books. Anything to become better husband. Sarah decides marriage is irreparably damaged by patriarchal expectations. Files for divorce. Demands half of everything plus ongoing support. Mark's house that he owned before marriage is somehow considered marital property. Sarah's lawyer argues that her domestic labor and emotional support contributed to its value, despite never paying mortgage or utilities. She's entitled to half the equity, Mark's retirement savings. Investments. Everything accumulated during marriage gets split. Sarah gets primary custody since she's been primary caregiver during separation. Mark gets every other weekend and 1 evening per week with his own son. Has to pay alimony because Sarah gave up her career for marriage and motherhood. Child support payments are calculated on his full salary, even though she gets half his assets. Legal fees cost Mark over $30. Ling ling ling. Sarah's fees paid by him. 2. Divorce finalizes. Mark loses house. Most of his savings. Custody of his son. Moves into small apartment. Working overtime to afford support payments. Sarah moves back into area with new boyfriend. Continues lifestyle blogging. Posts about thriving as single mother. Free from constraints of patriarchal marriage. Talks about how divorce liberated her from toxic relationship dynamics. Never mentions that Mark's paying for her entire lifestyle through support payments. Mark becomes completely different person. Depressed. Anxious. Barely socializing. Works constantly just to meet financial obligations to ex-wife. Sees his son few days per month. Child. Clearly being influenced against him. Sarah teaches son that daddy represents old-fashioned thinking that hurts women. Boy starts repeating feminist talking points about toxic masculinity. At age 6. Mark can't correct this without being accused of parental alienation. One day, Mark breaks down crying in front of me. Explains everything. Shows me legal documents, bank statements, custody agreements, everything. I'm shocked by how unfair the entire system seems toward men. Sarah got rewarded for leaving marriage with better financial situation than when single. Mark got punished for trying to save marriage and being primary breadwinner. Start researching divorce statistics. Laws. Outcomes for men versus women. Discover that Mark's situation is completely typical for divorced fathers. Women initiate 70% of divorces, but get better outcomes in court. Men lose custody. Pay support. Give up assets they earned before marriage. Legal system assumes women need protection and financial support, regardless of circumstances. Even when women work and earn money, courts favor them in custody and support decisions. Start understanding why so many men are terrified of marriage and commitment. It's not about hating women. It's about protecting themselves from life destruction. Watch Mark struggle for next 2 years, trying to rebuild his life. He's afraid to date anyone. Says he can't risk going through this again. Works 2 jobs to afford support payments. Lives in studio apartment. Meanwhile, Sarah is traveling. Posting Instagram photos from expensive vacations. Using Mark's support money to fund lifestyle she never could have afforded alone. Starts dating wealthy older man, but keeps collecting alimony from Mark. Legally, she can remarry without losing support as long as she doesn't cohabitate officially. System incentivizes her to avoid official commitment while extracting maximum resources. Mark's son visits less frequently. Clearly prefers living with mom and her boyfriend. Sarah has turned child against father by constantly discussing daddy's problematic behaviors. Boy talks about how men are dangerous and women need protection from them. At age 7, he's already absorbed ideology that paints his own father as threat. Mark loves his son desperately, but can't compete with constant indoctrination. Every interaction is supervised or monitored. Sarah claims to fear for child safety, despite Mark never showing any signs of violence or inappropriate behavior. 3 years post-divorce, Mark has panic attacks about dating. Friends try to set him up. He refuses every opportunity. I can't risk losing everything again. I'm barely surviving as it is. Explains that any serious relationship could result in same outcome. Even cohabitation creates legal obligations and potential asset claims in some states. Prenups can be thrown out if courts decide they're unfair to women, no matter what protections men think they have. System favors women in family court. Watch my brother transform from confident, successful man into anxious shell. He's afraid of women now. Not because he hates them, but because he learned consequences, realizes that marriage is a legally dangerous contract that offers men no protection. Women can leave any time and take half of everything, plus ongoing support, even when they contributed nothing financially and initiated the divorce themselves. Start questioning everything I believed about gender equality and fair treatment. Always thought feminism was about equal rights and opportunities for everyone. Never realized how legal system actually works in practice during family disputes. Research shows that domestic violence accusations spike during custody battles. Often used a strategy to gain advantage, regardless of actual truth. Men accused of abuse lose custody immediately and struggle to prove innocence. False accusations have no consequences. True accusations are mixed with strategic ones. System designed to protect women and children has become weapon against fathers. Mark's story isn't unique. Millions of men have experienced similar destruction. Start understanding why male suicide rates spike after divorce and custody loss. They lose children, homes, financial security, future prospects, everything meaningful. Society shows no sympathy, tells them to man up and stop complaining. Feminists argue that men deserve consequences for historically oppressing women, but individual men like Mark never oppressed anyone. Just wanted loving family. Now, I understand why young men are avoiding marriage and long-term relationships. They're not being immature or commitment phobic. They're being rational, protecting themselves from legal system that views them as disposable income sources. Women wonder where all the good men have gone. But system drove them away. Men like Mark used to believe in partnership and building life together. After experiencing family court, they realize it's a risky business proposition. No matter how much they love someone, relationship can end with life destruction. Meanwhile, women are encouraged to view marriage as empowerment and liberation, told they deserve support and protection regardless of their own choices, can leave marriages any time while keeping financial benefits indefinitely. This creates perverse incentives where commitment becomes liability for men. Watch Mark slowly rebuild his life. But he's fundamentally changed forever. Never again will he trust legal system or believe in fairness of marriage. Works constantly. Saves money. Avoids serious relationships completely. Sees his son when allowed. Tries to maintain connection despite alienation. Sarah continues blogging about single motherhood and feminist empowerment. Never mentions that her independence is subsidized by ex-husband's labor. Posts about toxic masculinity while living off money earned by man she divorced. The irony is completely lost on her and her feminist followers. Now, when female friends complain about men being afraid of commitment, I understand exactly why men have become cautious about marriage. They're not afraid of love or partnership. They're afraid of legal consequences. System that was designed to protect vulnerable women has created new vulnerabilities. Men have no protection from false accusations, financière exploitation, or parental alienation. Rational response is to avoid situations where these risks are highest. Watching Mark's destruction opened my eyes to reality of gender dynamics. Feminism talks about equality, but legal system heavily favors women. Women have reproductive rights, custody preferences, financial protections, domestic violence presumptions. Men have obligations, responsibilities, and presume guilt until proven innocent. This isn't equality. It's systemic advantage disguised as protection. No. I tell female friends to consider men's perspective before judging their caution. These guys aren't toxic or immature. They're protecting themselves from destruction. If women want men to commit, we need legal reforms that offer men protection. 2. Marriage should be partnership with equal risks and benefits for both parties. Until that happens, smart men will continue avoiding serious relationships. Can't blame them for learning from examples like my brother's experience.